My dudes, what's happening, man? This is Trent, and one of the things that people ask me all the time is, "Hey, man, can we see your portfolio that got you the job at Blizzard back in 2005?" And I've been pretty reluctant to do this because, man, it's going to be brutal. I'm going to rip my own portfolio apart. I'm going to tell you things that you could learn for possibly using in your own portfolio if you're putting one together, if you're trying to get some work at a game studio in 2019. But keep in mind, I'm going to get pretty brutal with myself here, and it's really just so that maybe you can benefit from my experience. First up, comic book work. I put a lot of comic book work into my portfolio. Why? Because I had a name in doing it. And if you've got something that you've ever worked on, it's good to put that in your portfolio. Should you put comic book work in your video game portfolio? No, not unless you're already established in that field and you really want them to know about it. It's bragging, a little bit of bragging. I was pretty well established with my work in indie comics on Creed and Ghost Rider, so I felt like, yeah, I'll put that in there. But I wouldn't recommend that you do that unless you've already got quite a career in that industry. Your video game concept art portfolio should have video game concept art in it. Maximo 3 was a canceled game, but I had done a lot of artwork for it, and I felt like it was a pretty close match to what Blizzard was doing with the World of Warcraft series. So it wasn't too much of a departure, and I felt like that was kind of one of my advantages. So I did put a bunch of Maximo artwork in there because it was an established IP. It showed that I could work with an established IP, but still think creatively. Problems with this sheet? Don't do this. Don't do the thing where I put a character on a sheet with a bunch of environments. Either your sheet should be about environments or about characters, but don't mix them, intertwine them so much like I did here. This page isn't horribly bad, but one of the things that I want to point out is that, I did it again here where I put in an environment into a page with a bunch of characters. Don't do that. A better way to approach this would be to have a character shot with a lot of different ideations or iterations. Either your page, if it's a character page, it should be about the iterations, all focusing on one singular character redesign. And here's 10 different versions of that. Or here's a breakdown of one that was approved. So for instance, you could do one page of Hagar, but here's the breakdown of the side view, the back view, the close-ups, the call-outs, the knuckles, or whatever specific, interesting, unique element is special for that character should be on the page. This page wasn't so bad, but again, too many characters on one sheet like this. It should be focused on either one character and a lot of iterations, or one character with call-outs specifically. Janko fairies, these were bright and colorful and stylized. I don't know that they really matched the Blizzard art style, but they did really help me to set my portfolio apart from people who were doing a lot of photo bashing and photorealism, which was kind of the rage back in 2005. Nowadays, I don't know. I think I'd probably, if I were going to put something like this in my portfolio, I'd have a side view, I'd have back views, I'd have more of the design worked out, But these were painted to be on t-shirts. I think they were done in Illustrator. This sheet is probably one of the better ones for presenting environments, but in hindsight, I probably would have had one that's a lot larger and then some supporting imagery around it or call-outs of specifics within that environment. Here's a call-out, a close-up of that table or that sign or something like that. Man, I had a lot going on every page in my portfolio back then. Yeesh, overwhelming. Sheets like this aren't bad. These are some characters from Janko. But again, you got the same problem that I had before, which is don't just give them pages full of a bunch of character drawings. No, that's not really concept art. These were some character designs from a canceled game at Capcom. So, they showed a good variety, and I tried to really present my portfolio like I was an idea factory. But if you're going to do a page full of a bunch of different characters, have some unifying element. If they're all wearing similar shaped armor or something that looks like they were all crafted they're an army of the same name under the same banner. Don't give them a bunch of random scattered ideas on one page. Design with intention, man. This page could have been presented a lot better if it was one character, and here's a front, here's a back, here's a side, and here's any callouts that are necessary for the modeler to be able to build this, or it's a page full of iterations. Back in 2001, I was really stoked about the prospect of a StarCraft sequel. This is way before StarCraft 2. So I did a bunch of drawings for the StarCraft characters. And a lot of times people will say, hey, don't put fan art in your concept art portfolio. And I think what they're trying to say is like, don't just put a drawing of a character that already exists in your portfolio. You want to show that you can design. So yeah, don't do fan art, but do redesigns. You know, why wouldn't a company want to hire somebody who knows their IPs and likes their IPs? So doing a fan redesign of an existing character that you're applying for that company to, that's not a bad thing. You know, it's not a bad thing to show them that you love what they already do, but bring concept art to the table, bring character design to the table. Don't just give them drawings of what they already have. This page is probably the best page in my portfolio from 2005. And if you have a character sheet in your portfolio, it should look like this. You've got a cool dynamic character pose. If he stands kind of in a unique way, you've got a front view that shows all the information that a modeler would need to be able to build this. It's primo, man. If you do character sheets, do them like this. In fact, this page alone might have been the thing that got me the job. Pages like this, okay drawings, but for a portfolio, for a major AAA game studio, not good enough. You know, there's one halfway decent little mood shot in there, but no concept art really. And also, it's just not really living up to the standards. And if you think I'm just being brutal, well, hey, I'm competing with like the best of the best in the business. Do you know what I'm saying? So I have to be really, really critical. I have to be really brutal. I probably could have fixed this page by just focusing on one of those environments and then having callouts or iterations of that one environment. At that time, I didn't have a lot of industry experience, but I had shipped a game as a pixel artist. I did all the environments for Terminator 3 on the Game Boy Advance. Look it up, brother. Yeah. Would I put pixel art or tile sets into my portfolio today? No way, not for me. But if you have some experience, you worked at a really successful indie game studio, yeah, sure, go ahead, put that in there. At least shows that you've worked with a team and you've shipped games before. It's a what's that? They'll go, what was this for? Oh, so you worked with a team before and you made a game. Oh, great, that's something. For this page, if I were going to do this now, I would put, one mech with a lot of different angles or details, callouts on one page. I wouldn't put like two different objects on one page like this. I got a boat over here and I got a mech over here. Yeah, it's inconsistent. Pages full of sketches, just in line art, like black and white line art, not going to get you a job working in games, usually. I wouldn't recommend doing something like this. If it showcases that you're an idea factory and you just got like loads and loads of ideas, sure, go for it. But I would lay down at least a two-tone color gradient on it so that you're giving it some kind of color if it's focused on the ideas themselves and the iterations. These days, I never see any other concept artists doing just this kind of work for games, unless they're like legendary. The older guys do. And these were the first drawings of Twilight Monk, and yeah, he was blue. Originally, he was blue. But something like this is more akin to like animation portfolio because I'm showing a lot of movement and things like that. If I were going to do like little face expressions and things, I'd do that on their own sheet. And I'd mostly just do that for animation portfolio and not for game development. It is neat though, because you can imagine the character being alive, This sheet isn't bad. And why? Because you've got a couple of cool monster designs and then you've got some like detailed call outs off to the side. That's a beautiful way to present some monster designs. Not a half bad environment. Obviously from a comic book thing though, so I wouldn't really keep a lot of the line work here. This is done with like ink. But it does give you a sense like I want to be in that place. You know what I mean? And if you're going to present like environment images, give them that feeling of like, oh, I want to interact with that object. Oh, I want to walk along that platform. Imagine yourself living in that world. How would you interact with it? Is there like hanging bells? Are there ladders? Give your environments a little bit more of a sense of interactivity and you'll go a long way with those. If you're going to present characters, do your characters like this, have a cool like front view and a back view. Every detail of your character is a part of a story for that character. Man, I would also take this dynamic character shot and put it all on one page. Nice, clean presentation with a cool dynamic character shot with those turnarounds all on one page for one cohesive, consistent character design. That's what a page should look like in your portfolio. But don't do like a dynamic shot like this all alone on its own page. That's more just a character drawing. So that was really what I showed them in my portfolio. And then they asked me to do a test and they asked me to do a character design and they asked me to do an environment design. And so the first thing I did was the troll, and the troll turned out okay, but I like to always give them a little bit more than what they asked for. So like pro tip, If they ask you to do a test, always give them more than they asked for and less time. And get it to them early and get it to them with more than what they asked for. So the second thing I gave them was a little bit of a bird design. And then I got in house and they were like, oh, this looks like the Arakoa. But I had never seen an Arakoa. So they saw that I already think like them. And that's really what you want to communicate, that you already think creatively like the way that they think. And they're going to love you if you present yourself that way, that you already, quote, get it. Do you know what I mean? When it came down to the environment, I really liked the night elves, so I wanted to do a scene that was very distinctly night elf. Like, this piece is unquestionably night elf. You could look at this piece, and if you played any Warcraft at all, you would know immediately. It's using the color palettes, it's using the kind of like shapes and the kind of style of construction and the proportions on things. This is very distinctly night elf from Warcraft specifically. And I would venture to say that this was the piece that really sealed the deal, doing that test and then showing them like, hey, I get it, really, I think closed the deal. The more it seems like they can just plug you into their team and you're going to bring a lot of ideas to help the designers along, and you're going to create new environments that already fit into the world that they have, like, you're gold if you can really communicate that with your portfolio and the test that they give you. So that's it. That was my portfolio that got me hired at Blizzard. I mean, it's not by any means is it up to the standards of what people expect at a company like that today. In hindsight, I would have hired my 2005 self for maybe illustration or comic book stuff, but I don't know that I would have hired that guy for concept art for games. That said, there have been a lot of concept artists throughout the years that I don't think really do concept art either. And they're famous, but it doesn't really matter. They're sort of legends in the field and beyond criticism anyway. So from that perspective, yeah, I was great. I was the perfect guy for that job. I certainly did have a lot of impact on those Blizzard games that I worked on. So certainly I did do my job well, but most of it was things that I learned while I was there from the process of actually doing and developing games with a team. That comes from day to day of learning what they want, asking them, hey, what do you need for this to get this job done, for this environment? You need callouts, you need details broken down, you need alternates, you need like close-ups of specific wall sconces and things like that. You find out all that stuff from being in the trenches with the development team, finding out what their needs are. It's just like anything, you learn what a relationship needs from being in a relationship. And so, the sooner you can get into even a smaller game studio, the thing I didn't mention is like Blizzard wouldn't hire me until I had some game industry experience, until I had shipped games at other companies. That made all the difference in the world. So if you're only set on those big game companies, you might be stopping yourself from really developing your skills, the real skills of making concept art for games. If you find yourself having a hard time getting in the door at even smaller game studios, I've got a couple of resources for you. I've put together a portfolio workshop. It's got all the do's and don'ts and templates and things that you're going to need to make an awesome concept art portfolio and get it into the hands of HR departments at game studios. And I've also got the Stylized Facility Concept Art Workshop, which is really kind of everything that I learned about the process. Like, it takes you through the whole process and even gives you homework on how to do concept art for an environment. And you start applying all those things, you combine all that together into your portfolio. I mean, that's about the best education I can possibly give you about how to do my job. So anyway, that's it for me on this one, guys. I hope that was really helpful for you. I would like to do a follow-up with my current portfolio and kind of tear that one apart too. But I want to thank you so much for stopping by. And until next time, I will catch you all in mañana. And ciao, baby. Oh, yeah.